begins with a quiet morning at a remote interspecies outpost located far from any busy trade routes. Most days feel almost the same there. The sun rises slowly over the metallic buildings, workers move around in small groups, and the air smells of engine oil, warm sand, and alien spices drifting from market stalls. The humans and aliens who live there are used to the calm. Nothing really surprising ever happens. That is why the medic on duty that day thought it would just be another ordinary shift. He usually checked the supply room, updated medical files, and waited for the rare patient to show up with standard issues like dehydration, heat rashes, or minor work injuries. But that day, something felt off from the beginning. As he walked toward the clinic, he noticed a group of alien workers gathered near the cargo yard. They were whispering, pointing, and keeping their distance from a corner behind some metal crates. Their eyes looked uneasy, almost fearful. He had never seen them act that way. Normally they were calm and focused, but now none of them wanted to get close to whatever was hiding back there. Curiosity pulled the medic toward them. He asked one of the workers what was going on. The alien shook his head and said something about a creature and danger. Another worker added that they had heard growling during the night and seen shadows moving in that area. But no one wanted to check. They simply avoided the space and warned others to stay away. For a moment, the medic hesitated. He wasn't expecting anything dramatic. After all, the outpost never had wild creatures wandering inside the main yard. But the fear on the workers' faces didn't seem fake. Instead of stepping back, he decided to approach the crates slowly. His instincts as a medic always pushed him to make sure no one or nothing was suffering without help. The closer he got, the quieter everything seemed. Even the usual noise of engines and machines felt distant. He could feel his heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but because something in the air felt heavy and sad. He walked around the final crate, and that's when he saw it for the first time. Lying in the shade was a massive feline-shaped creature. Its body was curled tightly, its breathing shallow and uneven. Its fur, normally bright and silky for its species, looked dull and tangled. He had seen pictures of these creatures in medical records, but never examined one in real life. They were large, strong, and known to be loyal guardians for certain alien families. But this one looked nothing like the healthy version he had studied. It was weak, trembling, and clearly in pain. The sight made the medic stop in his tracks. He lowered himself slightly, keeping a safe distance so he wouldn't startle it. Even from far away, he could see that something was very wrong with the creature. Its ribs showed through its skin, its eyes were half open but unfocused, and its tail barely moved as if it didn't have the strength. He quietly called out to the workers behind him, asking how long the creature had been there. They answered from a distance, saying they found it early that morning, but refused to go near it. They believed it was infected or cursed, something dangerous that should be left alone. Many of them said it was better for nature to take its course. But their words didn't sit well with the medic. Leaving a living creature to suffer went against everything he believed in. He moved a little closer and noticed that the creature didn't even try to growl or defend itself. That was unusual for a species known for its powerful defensive instincts. Instead, it tried weakly to lift its head, but the effort was too much, and it let it fall back down gently. That tiny movement broke whatever hesitation the medic had left. The creature wasn't dangerous. It was scared, exhausted, and barely holding on. He slowly crouched and gently extended his hand, palm open, to show he had no bad intentions. Even though he was still a good distance away, the creature's eyes shifted toward him. They were tired, but there was also a faint sense of hope in them, something like trust or maybe desperation. A creature that's sick didn't have the energy to hide its true feelings. The medic spoke in a calm voice, the same tone he always used with nervous patients. He told the creature that he wouldn't hurt it, that he only wanted to help. The workers behind him murmured, calling him brave or foolish. Some warned him to step back, but he ignored them. His attention stayed on the creature. After a few minutes of observing, he took out his medical scanner. It wasn't the most advanced tool, but it could pick up basic life signs from a safe range. He pointed the device slowly, making sure the creature could see what he was doing. The scanner beeped faintly as it collected information. The medic kept his eyes on the readings, and his expression changed from concern to something much heavier. The creature's vitals were dangerously low. Its temperature, heart rate, and oxygen levels were dropping far below a normal range. It was dehydrated and suffering from a complex internal problem. The scanner couldn't identify everything from that distance, but the medic could tell one thing for certain. The creature wouldn't survive much longer without help. He sat back on his heels, thinking. Treating a creature of this size and species would require permission, supplies, and proper equipment. But asking for approval meant waiting, and waiting could cost the creature its life. He didn't want to break rules, yet the thought of walking away felt wrong. His conscience fought with the regulations, written on the walls of the clinic. He looked around and realized that everyone else had already made their decision. No one wanted to be responsible. No one wanted to get close. No one believed the creature could be saved. To them, it was just another problem that nature or time would solve. But the medic couldn't see it that way. He saw a living being that still had life left inside it, even if only a small amount. And he felt that if it had been abandoned by its own kind, someone had to step in. He took a slow breath and moved a little closer, careful not to startle the creature. It didn't move away. Instead, it lifted its head slightly and let out a soft, weak sound, not a growl, but something closer to a plea. That single sound convinced the medic more than anything else. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't choosing to be alone. It needed help. He placed his bag on the ground and took out a small hydration injector. It wasn't enough for full treatment, but it could stabilize the creature temporarily. He checked the dosage, double-checked the species compatibility, and prepared to move close enough to administer it. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear of the creature, but from fear of doing the wrong thing or causing harm. He whispered softly as he approached, letting the creature hear his voice so it wouldn't feel alone. When he finally reached its side, he saw more details: the rough breathing, the infected patches on its skin, the trembling muscles. It looked like it had been suffering for days. He gently injected a small amount of hydration fluid into a safe area on its foreleg. The creature flinched slightly, but didn't resist. The medic pulled his hand back and watched closely. After a few minutes, the creature's breathing became a little more stable, not strong, but steady enough to give it a chance. The workers behind him slowly moved closer, surprised that the creature hadn't lashed out. Some even whispered that the human medic must be gifted or fearless. But the medic wasn't thinking about praise. He was thinking about what to do next. This was only the beginning. A temporary fix wouldn't save the creature. It needed real care, real treatment, and a safe place to rest. He didn't know exactly how he would manage it, but he knew one thing clearly. He couldn't walk away now. And as he looked at the creature's tired eyes, he felt something unexpected, something like a quiet promise forming inside him. He would try. He would give this abandoned creature a chance, even if no one else believed it deserved one. That moment marked the beginning of a story no one on the outpost would ever forget. Continues with the medic sitting beside the large feline creature, trying to understand how something so majestic could end up abandoned in a corner of the cargo yard. He could still hear the distant sounds of the outpost, the hum of machines, the chatter of workers, the echo of heavy containers being moved, but everything around him felt softer, as if the world had stepped back to give him space to think. The creature's weak breathing kept pulling his attention, reminding him that time was slipping away. A few workers gathered again at a safe distance, watching curiously. Their expressions had changed slightly since they saw the medic inject the hydration fluid. They were still cautious, but now more confused than afraid. One worker finally stepped closer and said that the creature had not been there the previous evening. It must have wandered in during the night. Already in a critical state, this information only raised more questions for the medic. These creatures were not wild animals. They belonged to powerful alien families and rarely traveled alone. They were usually transported with care, surrounded by handlers, and kept in secure habitats. Seeing one collapsed on the ground, alone and suffering, didn't make sense. The medic asked if anyone had seen a transport ship or a caravan early that morning. A few shrugged. One worker mentioned hearing a loud engine before sunrise, but assumed it was just a supply delivery. No one had checked. No one ever checked. This outpost wasn't exactly known for strict observations or disciplined routines. The medic looked at the creature again. Something inside him felt tight. He had seen abandoned stray animals back on Earth, but nothing like this. This creature had value, purpose, and a bond with its original owners. For it to end up here meant something serious had happened, or someone had made a cold choice. He slowly scanned the creature once more, gathering additional data. The scanner picked up traces of an internal parasite, but the device wasn't advanced enough to identify the exact type. The medic knew enough medical theory to understand that alien parasites could be extremely complex. Some species had natural defenses against them, but this particular feline species wasn't one of them. That explained the symptoms: the weakness, the dull fur, the trembling muscles, the unfocused eyes. If untreated, the parasites would eventually overwhelm the body. The creature's condition suggested it had been struggling for a long time, possibly weeks. How had no one helped it before now? The medic thought about contacting the alien authorities immediately, but then he imagined what they would say. He had dealt with them before. Most of them viewed creatures like this less as living beings and more as expensive equipment. If one got sick, it was often easier for them to replace it instead of paying for treatment. They followed strict rules, and compassion was rarely part of their decisions. He took a slow breath, feeling frustration rise inside him. He didn't want to make assumptions, but he also didn't want to delay action. He needed answers, and he needed to know why this creature had been abandoned like this. Leaving the creature in the shade, he walked toward the small communication office near the edge of the cargo yard. The room was warm and crowded with old equipment, but it had a direct channel to the alien noble families who frequently interacted with the outpost. The medic sent a brief message describing the creature's condition and asking if any of them had recently lost or transported one dot. It didn't take long for a reply to come back. A short voice message appeared on the screen, sounding cold and impatient. The alien on the other end explained that, yes, Guardian Beast had been part of their last transport, but it had been contaminated by a parasite that no one wanted to risk treating. The transporter had been ordered to leave it behind at the nearest outpost to avoid spreading the infestation. When the medic asked why it had been left without care, the alien simply replied that the creature's survival chances were too low to justify investment. Then the call ended without another word. The medic stood still for a moment, staring at the silent screen. What he had heard bothered him more than he expected. The creature had been discarded like broken cargo. No effort to ease its suffering. No guilt, no hesitation. Just abandoned. When he returned to the cargo yard, the creature lifted its head slightly when it sensed him coming back. That tiny motion made his heart clench. Even in pain, it recognized the one person who hadn't walked away. He knelt beside it and placed a steady hand near its paw, not touching, but close enough to show he was there. He tried not to let his frustration show on his face. Instead, he focused on the creature's slow breathing. It was calming a little, but the improvement was temporary. Hydration alone wouldn't keep it alive. It needed real medical treatment, parasite removal, proper nutrition, and careful monitoring. It also needed trust, which was already starting to form in small, precious steps. The medic began talking softly again, explaining each movement so the creature wouldn't feel startled. He adjusted the creature's position gently, placing a cloth under its head to make it more comfortable. The creature closed its eyes for a moment, as if relieved to feel kindness again. Some workers whispered behind him, wondering why he was putting so much effort into something that wasn't his responsibility. Others looked at the creature with curiosity, maybe sympathy, but none dared to get too close. The medic didn't blame them. Fear was natural, but he wished they could see what he saw, a living being that didn't deserve to be left behind. As hours passed, the sun shifted and the shade moved. The medic realized he needed to get the creature out of the open yard before the heat became unbearable. The outpost wasn't built for medical emergencies like this. The clinic was small, and the equipment was limited. But it was better than leaving the creature here. He considered using a hover stretcher, but they were usually reserved for sentient patients, and there were rules about cross-species use. But rules didn't stop him earlier, and they weren't going to stop him now. He approached a nearby worker and asked if they could help bring a stretcher. The worker hesitated, then finally agreed, perhaps moved by the medic's dedication. Together, they brought the stretcher as close as they could. The creature was heavy, far heavier than a human-sized patient, so lifting it would require several people. The worker reluctantly asked others for help, and after some hesitation, a small group stepped forward. They didn't want to touch the creature directly, but they could help shift the stretcher into position. The medic guided them carefully. With slow, coordinated movements, they managed to roll the creature onto the stretcher without causing pain or panic. Surprisingly, the creature didn't resist. It only let out a soft sound, like a sigh, as if grateful that someone was finally helping it. Once secured, the medic and the workers pushed the stretcher through the quiet pathways of the outpost. A few people stopped to stare, shocked to see such a creature being transported. The medic ignored their reactions. His focus stayed on the rhythmic but weak breathing of the animal on the stretcher. When they reached the clinic, he guided the creature into a small room, usually reserved for long-term observation. It wasn't perfect, but it was clean, cool, and comfortable. He lowered the lights so they wouldn't strain the creature's eyes, and brought a water source nearby. One of the workers asked him why he was going to such lengths. The medic didn't know how to give a long explanation. He simply said, "Because no one else would." After the workers left, the medic stood alone in the quiet room. The creature lay on the padded bed, still weak, but no longer exposed to the harsh sun or frightened voices. It watched him with tired eyes that seemed to say everything without words: fear, exhaustion, confusion, and a small flicker of hope that the medic knew the hardest part was still ahead. He needed to identify the parasite, gather proper medical tools, and prepare a treatment plan. But he also knew that saving the creature wasn't just about medicine. It was about giving it a sense that it wasn't forgotten. He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed, staying close just in case the creature felt afraid or lonely. He wasn't sure how long he sat there, but he didn't mind. Some moments didn't need rushing, and as he watched over the creature, he realized something important. This wasn't just a medical case. It was a responsibility he was willing to carry, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. Begins with the medic standing alone in the quiet room of the clinic, looking at the creature resting on the padded bed. The day had been long, and the struggles were far from over. The hydration injection had helped a little, but the creature was still dangerously weak. Its breathing was shallow, and every few minutes its body twitched from discomfort. The medic could tell it was fighting inside, struggling to hold on. He walked to the side table where he had placed his scanner, a few basic tools, and the limited supplies available at the outpost. He knew these tools were not enough. Treating an interspecies parasite wasn't something he could manage with simple equipment. He needed specialized medicine, stronger scanners, and protective tools he didn't have. But he also knew that asking for permission from the alien authorities would take too long. By the time they approved anything, the creature might already be gone. He kept thinking about the message he had received earlier from the alien family, the cold voice that spoke as if the creature's life didn't matter. They had chosen to leave it behind because saving it wasn't convenient for them. That thought kept circling in his mind, not in anger, but in disbelief. How could anyone who once cared for this creature simply abandon it without looking back? The medic rubbed his forehead, trying to push away the frustration clouding his thoughts. This wasn't the time to feel discouraged. The creature needed him to be clear-headed, calm, and steady. He took a deep breath and turned back toward the bed. When he approached, the creature slowly opened its eyes. Even though they were tired and dim, they followed him. It wasn't aggressive or afraid. It was simply watching, holding on to the only familiar thing it had, the medic's presence. He felt a strange warmth in that gaze. It was as if the creature understood that he was trying his best. He sat down beside the bed again, letting the creature see that he wasn't leaving. Then he gently placed his hand near its paw, not touching but close enough to give reassurance. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The room was quiet, and only the soft hum of the air filters filled the silence. But the medic knew that comfort alone wouldn't save the creature. He needed to act. He stood up and looked around the small clinic, thinking of every possibility. There was an unused storage room at the back of the building, something like a forgotten space full of old supplies, broken equipment, and dusty crates. He had checked it once when he first arrived at the outpost, but no one used it anymore. It wasn't part of the main area, and it didn't appear on most logs. If he needed to perform risky procedures, that room might be the safest place to work quietly. Away from questions or reports, the medic stepped out for a moment, walking through the hallway as quietly as possible. He unlocked the old storage room and flicked on a dim light. Dust floated in the air, and the room smelled slightly musty. But the space was large and private, perfect for setting up a secret treatment area. He imagined the creature lying on a clean bed in this room, free from the noise and judgment outside. He imagined working through the night, trying to remove the parasites before they could cause more damage. It wouldn't be easy, but it was doable. And most importantly, it would give the creature a real chance. The medic returned to the main room and checked on the creature again. It was awake, but clearly struggling. The medic spoke softly as he prepared another small hydration injection. He explained what he was doing, even though he knew the creature couldn't understand his words. It was more for comfort than communication. He injected the fluid carefully and watched as the creature's breathing became a little steadier. Now came the hardest part, moving the creature again, this time without any help. The workers had gone back to their duties, and the medic didn't want to attract attention by asking for stretcher support a second time. He needed to do it alone. The creature was still weak, which made things easier, but its size made it a challenge. He adjusted the stretcher, secured the straps gently, and made sure the creature was stable before moving it. Then, with slow steps, he pushed the stretcher toward the back hallway. Every turn felt heavy, not just physically but emotionally. He didn't want to cause the creature any more discomfort, so he moved as carefully as possible. When he finally reached the storage room, he opened the door with his shoulder and rolled the stretcher inside. The air was cooler and calmer in this room. He set the creature down in the center, switched on the small lights, and took a deep breath. This was where the real work would begin. The medic gathered blankets, clean cloths, and whatever useful items he could find in the clinic. He wiped down an old table, rearranged boxes to make space, and placed a tray of basic tools nearby. It wasn't a high-tech medical facility, but he knew that care, attention, and determination mattered more than fancy devices. He used the scanner again, this time slowly tracing it near the creature's chest and abdomen. The readings showed the presence of multiple parasites inside, more than he had expected. They were small but active, and the scanner warned of inflammation in several organs. The medic felt a knot tighten in his chest. The parasites were spreading faster than he had hoped. He leaned in closer and whispered, "I'm going to do everything I can, all right?" The creature blinked slowly, its eyes following his every movement. The medic left the room briefly to grab gloves, disinfectants, nutrient gels, and several vials of basic medicine. Most of these medicines weren't designed for this species, but he studied the formulas carefully and calculated safe doses. He worked with caution, knowing that even a small mistake could make things worse. When he returned, the creature's breathing had become a little faster. It was in pain. The medic moved quickly, setting up a calm environment, lowering the lights even more, and placing soft padding around the creature's sides. Then he prepared a gentle sedation mist, just enough to lessen the pain, not enough to make the creature sleep deeply. He needed it calm, not unconscious. He activated the mist slowly, letting the creature breathe it in at its own pace. Within moments, its body relaxed, and the trembling became milder. The medic placed a hand near its face, and the creature leaned slightly toward it, trusting him more than ever. Now the real challenge began. He started with surface treatment first, cleaning infected areas gently and checking for signs of external parasite marks. Then he prepared the internal medicine low strength, but designed to weaken parasites so the body could fight better. He administered a small dose, watching the creature closely for any reaction. Minutes passed. The creature's breathing stayed steady. No alarming signs appeared. The medic allowed himself a small sigh of relief. But this was only the first step. He studied the scanner's readings again and realized that he would need to extract some of the parasites manually, using improvised tools and steady hands. It was risky, but leaving them inside was even more dangerous. He set up his tools carefully, making sure everything was clean and organized. As he prepared to begin, he looked at the creature once more. Even sedated, it seemed aware of what was happening. It wasn't scared. It wasn't resisting. It trusted him fully now. That trust gave him strength. He whispered, "Stay with me. We're going to get you through this." The procedure began slowly. The medic worked with delicate movements, using his scanner to guide each step. Sweat formed on his forehead as he concentrated. He paused often to check the creature's breathing, making sure it remained stable. Every small success gave him hope. Every challenge made him more determined. Hours passed like minutes. The medic didn't stop, didn't rest, and didn't allow himself to think of failure. The creature's life depended on his hands. By the time he finished the last step for the night, the creature was resting peacefully. It looked tired but calmer, its body no longer shaking as violently as before. The medic sat back in exhaustion, wiping his face with his sleeve. He knew this was only the beginning. The parasite problem wasn't solved yet. It would take days, maybe weeks, of treatment to bring the creature back to full health. But tonight, he had given it something important to him. A chance. A reason to keep fighting. The medic pulled a chair beside the bed and stayed with the creature, making sure it wouldn't wake up alone or scared. He watched the soft rise and fall of its chest, feeling a quiet sense of victory. For the first time since the creature arrived at the outpost, it wasn't alone. And for the first time, the medic felt that maybe, just maybe, he could save it. When the medic returned to the holding cabin the next morning, He expected to find the feline creature resting quietly. Instead, he found it pacing in slow circles, dragging its tail weakly behind it. Its breathing was shallow, and its eyes seemed darker than before. The sight made him stop at the doorway for a moment. It wasn't fear that held him still. It was the weight of responsibility. This creature was depending on him, even though it didn't fully understand who he was or why he was helping. He moved forward slowly so he wouldn't startle it. The moment the creature heard his footsteps, it stopped pacing and looked at him. Its ears lowered, not in aggression, but in something that felt almost like relief. He knelt down, giving it space, letting it choose whether to come closer. After a few seconds, it stepped toward him, lowering its head as if trying to say it was tired. He touched the side of its neck gently. Its skin felt warm, too warm. Fever. The parasites inside its body were becoming more aggressive. He had warned the alien crew that there wasn't much time left, but they were already long gone, having left their sick creature behind without looking back. The medics still didn't understand how they could do that. How could anyone abandon a creature that clearly trusted them? He opened the small medical kit he had brought. Inside were the supplies he had been preparing all night: antiparasitic, liquid, nutrient gel, and a basic fluid pack he had modified to work with the creature's strange anatomy. He had stayed up studying every scan he took, comparing it with notes from alien biology files the crew had carelessly left on their ship. They had treated their own creature almost like equipment, not a living being. He moved closer, showing the creature the items slowly. He didn't know how much it understood, but he wanted it to see he wasn't bringing anything harmful. The creature sniffed the air, then lowered itself onto its side, exhausted. That small action told him everything. It trusted him enough to let him work. He cleaned the area on its shoulder where he needed to insert the small tube. The creature flinched but didn't try to pull away. He whispered soothing words, not because the creature knew the language, but because tone mattered. Any living being can understand calmness. Once the fluid pack was connected, the creature let out a long breath. Its body relaxed bit by bit, as though the new warmth spreading through its veins brought some comfort. The medic felt relief but knew the fight wasn't over. The parasites were still inside, buried deep in muscle tissue. The medication he injected would slow them down, but he would need to perform a more difficult procedure soon, one that involved removing the clusters physically. For now, he cleaned the wounds again, wiping away the cracked skin and dried patches that showed how long the creature had been suffering. The more he examined its body, the more he realized it hadn't received real care for months. It had scars that didn't heal properly and patches of fur missing from stress. The aliens who owned it must have known it was sick long before they abandoned it, yet they never tried to treat it. The thought made his stomach twist. The creature lifted its head slightly and pressed its forehead against his arm. This time he didn't pull back or freeze. He let the connection stay for a moment. He wasn't used to bonding with alien beings, but there was something deeply familiar about this one. Its pain, its fear, its quiet hope. Anyone who had ever cared for an injured animal would understand. The sound of the wind outside reminded him. They were still inside a half-broken ship resting in a hidden valley. The alien crew had rushed off after leaving their sick creature behind, clearly trying to avoid responsibility. Maybe they were afraid of some kind of authority. Maybe they simply didn't feel attachment. But the medic didn't want to waste energy thinking about them anymore. The creature in front of him needed his entire focus. After stabilizing its temperature, he prepared the nutrient gel. It wasn't the creature's usual food, but it was the best he could create with what he had. He scooped some on his fingers and held it close to the creature's mouth. At first it hesitated. Then hunger overcame hesitation, and it licked the gel slowly. Its tongue was rough, like a big feline from Earth, but its movements were gentler, almost careful. When it finished, it nudged his hand lightly, asking for more. "Easy," he whispered. "We'll go slow." He gave it small portions, making sure not to overwhelm its weak stomach. Watching it eat, even a little, brought a sense of hope that lifted the heaviness in his chest. Progress was progress, no matter how small. When the creature finished eating, it curled its body carefully, placing its paw close to where he sat. Not touching him, just near him, as if wanting him to stay. He sat beside it and checked its breathing again. Slower, more stable. The fever was lowering Dot. He took a short break, leaning his back against a metal wall. He hadn't slept much, but his exhaustion didn't matter. Every time he looked at the creature, he felt more determined to help it survive. He couldn't explain why this creature touched him so deeply. Maybe because it had been left behind, unwanted and sick, yet it still had so much fight in its eyes. He had seen many injured beings during his years as a medic, but very few showed this kind of spirit. Dot, as the creature rested, he studied its behavior. Every now and then it twitched its ears, reacting to sounds outside. Even in sickness, it was alert. He wondered what it had been like before it fell ill. The alien files called it a feline guardian unit, which sounded more like a title for a living weapon than a companion. But looking at it now, there was nothing dangerous about it. It was scared, tired, and simply trying to survive. The medic spent the next few hours writing notes and planning the next steps of treatment. He needed to remove the parasite clusters soon, but the creature wasn't strong enough yet. He had to find a safe balance between speed and gentleness. If he rushed the process, he could injure it. If he waited too long, the parasites could spread into vital organs. It was a race against time, but he had faced worse challenges before. Dot, at one point, the creature woke up and reached out its paw gently, tapping his leg. He looked down and realized it wanted reassurance. He placed his hand on its paw, feeling the rough pads under his palm. The creature relaxed instantly. Hours passed, and he continued monitoring its progress. When the evening light began to fade, he noticed its breathing had become smoother. It even opened its eyes with a little more brightness than earlier. That was enough to tell him the treatment was working. He prepared a soft blanket he had brought from his own shelter. It was a simple fabric, but warm and clean. When he placed it over the creature, it shifted slightly, trying to find a comfortable position. Once settled, it closed its eyes and let out a soft sound, a sound that felt like trust. The medic sat beside it again, feeling a sense of calm settle in the room. He knew the next day would be difficult. The real procedure would begin soon, and he would need all his energy and focus. But for now, he allowed himself to rest a little. He leaned his back against the wall again, watching the creature breathe peacefully. Before he closed his eyes, he spoke softly. "You're not alone anymore. I'm here, and I'm not leaving you behind." The creature seemed to understand. Its tail moved just a little, brushing against his boot in a quiet gesture of comfort. In that silent moment, inside a half-broken alien ship in the middle of nowhere, two beings from different worlds shared something simple and powerful: hope. The next morning, the medic woke up before dawn, as he had done for the past few days. The creature was already awake, lying on the blanket he had carefully placed the night before. Its breathing was calmer than yesterday, but its eyes were still tired. When it saw him, it lifted its head slightly, watching him closely. Even in its weak state, there was a flicker of recognition in those eyes, a reminder that it remembered who had cared for it when no one else would. He walked slowly toward it, placing a hand near its paw, just to let it know he was there. The creature didn't move away. Instead, it nudged slightly, a small but significant gesture. The medic felt a warmth in his chest. He knew that the creature had started trusting him completely. That trust, fragile yet growing, was what would make the next steps possible. After a few minutes of quiet observation, He prepared the tools and medicines for the day. Today was different. The creature was stronger than before, its body responding to hydration, nutrient gel, and the medications he had given it. The parasites were weakening, but they were still there. The next step required precision, patience, and care. He had to remove the remaining parasites physically. It was a delicate process, and it required a calm, steady environment. He set up the treatment area carefully. The storage room, which had been dusty and forgotten, now felt like a safe space. He arranged all supplies in neat order: clean cloths, sterilized tools, fluid packs, and nutrient gels. Every item had a purpose. Every small detail mattered. He glanced at the creature, lying on the padded bed, and whispered softly, "We're going to make you strong again." Step by step, day by day. The creature blinked slowly, as if acknowledging his words. There was no fear in its gaze anymore, only cautious hope. That moment reminded the medic why he was doing this. He wasn't just performing a medical procedure. He was giving life, comfort, and dignity to a being that had been abandoned and left to suffer. He started with the easier tasks first. He cleaned the creature's fur and removed patches of dried blood and dirt. Its skin, though fragile, was beginning to regain a healthier tone. The medic took his time, speaking in soft, soothing tones. Each movement was deliberate, careful not to startle or hurt the creature. He noticed small signs of improvement. The tail flicked occasionally, the ears twitched in response to sound, and the breathing was steadier than it had been in days. Once the surface was cleaned, he prepared for the internal work. He had studied every note, every scan, and every file he could find about the parasites. He had even improvised new tools for the procedure, using clean, safe equipment modified to suit the creature's unique anatomy. His hands were steady despite exhaustion. He knew this was a turning point. If done correctly, the creature could start recovering fully. He approached the creature slowly, letting it sense his presence. It didn't flinch. It simply lay still, trusting him entirely. He began the process carefully, removing clusters of parasites that were slowing its recovery. It was a slow, painstaking task. Each extraction had to be precise, every movement measured. The medic paused often to check vital signs and ensure the creature wasn't in distress. Hours passed, but he didn't notice the time. His focus never wavered. He spoke to the creature gently, even though it didn't understand his words. The tone mattered more than the language. The creature responded to the calm energy, letting him work with minimal resistance. During a short break, the medic offered the nutrient gel. The creature ate slowly, savoring each bite. Its energy seemed to return in small increments, and for the first time in days, he saw a glimmer of vitality in its eyes. He smiled quietly to himself, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. Each small step meant progress. Each movement toward recovery meant hope that by midday, the creature was showing remarkable signs of improvement. Its breathing was stronger, its posture more stable, and its eyes brighter. The parasites had been reduced significantly, and the medic could see that the internal organs were stabilizing. He knew the process wasn't over, but he also knew that he had given the creature a fighting chance no one else had thought it deserved. As the afternoon passed, the medic observed another change. The creature's behavior was different. It started lifting its head more frequently, looking around the room with curiosity. It even attempted to stand, wobbling on its legs, but trying nonetheless. He stayed close, ready to support it if necessary, and whispered encouragements. The creature seemed to sense his approval, continuing to push its strength, little by little. By evening, it was clear that a transformation had begun. The creature, once weak and trembling, was slowly regaining its original vigor. Its fur, still patchy in some places, looked healthier. The eyes that had been dull and weary now held a spark, a reflection of resilience and life returning. The medic felt a swell of pride and relief. This wasn't just a medical victory. It was proof that care, patience, and compassion could overcome neglect and abandonment. The alien workers who occasionally peeked into the storage room were beginning to notice. At first, they were hesitant, unsure what to make of the medic's dedication. Some whispered among themselves, questioning why a human would go to such lengths for an abandoned alien creature. But as the hours passed, and they saw the creature move, eat, and respond with curiosity, their attitudes shifted. A few even offered small gestures, bringing extra blankets, monitoring the room from a distance, or simply observing quietly. The medic didn't expect recognition. He didn't need it. But he noticed the subtle change in attitude. Even those who had abandoned hope for the creature were now witnessing its recovery. That realization gave him quiet satisfaction. Compassion, once applied, could ripple outward and inspire others, even if silently as night approached. The creature was able to stand steadily on all four legs. It moved around the padded area cautiously, testing its strength. The medic followed closely, ready to intervene if necessary, but the creature surprised him. It began exploring the room, sniffing corners, and even approaching him at times. Each movement showed increasing confidence and trust. The medic took a moment to sit beside it, letting it rest near him. He spoke softly, recounting the day's progress and gently praising its strength. The creature leaned slightly against his leg, a gesture that conveyed trust, gratitude, and recognition. The bond between them was growing stronger every hour. What had started as an act of duty had become a connection that neither could ignore. He realized that this creature, once abandoned and left to die, had now chosen to stand beside him. It wasn't waiting for permission from its alien owners or seeking approval from the authorities. It had found someone who cared, someone who would stay. And in return, it was learning to trust again. That night, the medic stayed awake longer than usual, monitoring vital signs and ensuring the creature remained stable. He reflected on how far they had come. From the first day, when the creature could barely lift its head, to now, when it moved with strength and awareness, the change was remarkable. It wasn't just the medicine or his care that had achieved this. It was patience, empathy, and the decision to never turn away Dot as he watched the creature finally settle into a comfortable position for sleep. The medic felt a quiet sense of victory. This was more than healing. It was transformation. A being once considered lost and abandoned was now fighting to live, growing stronger day by day. The creature's recovery wasn't complete, but it was enough to show that hope was real, that compassion mattered, and that one person's care could make a world of difference. The night was calm, with only the soft hum of the air filters and the gentle breathing of the creature filling the room. The medic sat back against the wall, tired but content. He knew the next steps would still be challenging, but he also knew that together they could face whatever came. The bond they shared had become unbreakable, and that bond was stronger than any obstacle. For the first time in a long time, the medic allowed himself to relax. The creature's steady breathing and slow movements gave him reassurance. Tomorrow would bring more treatment, more challenges, and more care. But for tonight, they had both survived another day. Both had learned that trust, patience, and compassion could conquer fear, abandonment, and weakness. As the lights dimmed, the medic whispered once more, "We did well today, and we'll do better tomorrow." The creature curled its body closer, resting near him, finally at ease. The room, once filled with tension and worry, now held quiet hope and a promise of recovery. In that moment, it was clear. This was not just a story of survival. It was a story of resilience, trust, and the power of care. And it was far from over. By the next morning, the medic could hardly believe the progress. The feline creature, once weak and trembling, was now standing firmly on all four legs. Its movements were deliberate, its eyes bright with awareness, and even its fur looked healthier than it had in weeks. The medic watched quietly, letting the creature explore the small space they had made their temporary home. It padded around carefully, sniffing the corners, testing the air, and occasionally looking back to make sure he was still there. It was a remarkable change. Only a few days ago, the creature had been barely able to lift its head, fighting against exhaustion and sickness. Now, it moved with a cautious confidence, a spark of life that had been missing when the aliens abandoned it. The medic felt a swell of pride, not because of himself, but because of the resilience of the creature. It had chosen to survive, even when no one else gave it a chance. He approached slowly, speaking softly as he always did. "Good morning. You're looking stronger today." The creature's ears twitched, and it tilted its head in a way that almost seemed like understanding. He offered it a small portion of nutrient gel, which it accepted eagerly, licking every bit from his hand. He smiled. That small act eating without fear meant more than words could say. It meant trust, recovery, and hope. The medic knew that today would be a turning point. The remaining parasites had weakened, and the creature's body was strong enough to handle more intensive treatment. He had prepared a careful plan, step by step, ensuring no sudden movements or unnecessary pain. He set up the space meticulously, making sure the environment was calm, the temperature comfortable, and the tools clean and ready. As he worked, he noticed the subtle changes in behavior. The creature no longer flinched at every noise. It lifted its head proudly, showing curiosity instead of fear. It responded to his voice, even nudging him gently with its head at times. It was no longer just surviving, it was beginning to thrive. Hours passed as the medic worked carefully, monitoring vitals, giving nutrients, and applying the last treatments to remove the lingering parasites. The process was slow, but the creature was patient. It didn't lash out, it didn't resist, and it didn't panic. Every time he finished a step, it looked at him, its gaze full of quiet understanding. He knew it was aware that someone had cared for it when no one else had. That bond between them had grown stronger each day, forming a trust that neither words nor actions could easily break. By afternoon, the creature began moving beyond the small padded area. It stretched, testing the limits of its strength, and walked carefully around the storage room. The medic followed at a distance, ready to assist, but allowing it to explore. For the first time since it had been abandoned, it moved freely, unafraid of injury or rejection. Its tail lifted slightly, and its ears twitched with interest. Alert but relaxed, the alien workers who occasionally peeked through the door could hardly believe what they were seeing. The creature, once weak and abandoned, now moved with grace and confidence. Some of them whispered to each other, expressing surprise that a human had achieved what they thought impossible. A few brought small supplies to help, but mostly they just watched, unsure whether to intervene. The medic didn't need their approval. He only needed to focus on the creature. As the evening approached, he gave the creature a final feeding, ensuring it had enough nutrients to sustain it overnight. The creature ate slowly, savoring each bite. Once finished, it turned toward him and rested its head near his knee. He stroked its fur gently, feeling the warmth and strength returning. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. There were no rules, no deadlines, no judgments, just two beings connected by care and trust. The medic thought about the aliens who had abandoned it. He didn't feel anger anymore, only a quiet understanding that not everyone valued life in the same way. Some saw creatures as property, as tools, or as investments. Others saw them as living beings deserving of care and compassion. He knew which side he stood on, and he knew that the creature now recognized it too. Night fell, and the storage room grew quiet. The creature curled up on the padded floor, finally at ease, while the medic sat nearby, monitoring its breathing. He reflected on the journey they had taken together, from the first day when it had barely lifted its head, through the long nights of treatment, to the moment now when it could stand, walk, and trust again. It had been a journey of patience, empathy, and determination. Every step mattered. Every choice mattered. The next morning, the creature moved with even more confidence. It walked to the small window of the storage room and peered outside. For the first time, it seemed curious about the world beyond the walls. The medic watched silently, realizing that recovery wasn't just physical. It was mental and emotional too. The creature had begun to regain its spirit, its sense of self, and its will to engage with life again. The alien authorities eventually caught wind of the situation. They had heard whispers about a human medic working tirelessly to save an abandoned creature. Initially, they were skeptical, almost dismissive. But when they arrived at the outpost and saw the creature healthy and standing proudly beside the medic, their disbelief was clear. The creature didn't retreat. It didn't cower. It stood tall, loyal to the human who had saved it. The alien officials demanded an explanation. The medic calmly recounted the events, how he had found the creature abandoned, how the previous owners had left it to die, and how he had worked day and night to restore its health. He spoke honestly, without exaggeration, but with enough detail to show the dedication and compassion involved. The aliens were shocked. They hadn't expected a human to accomplish what they themselves deemed impossible. Their expressions changed from disbelief to respect, though slowly. Some of them even admitted, quietly, that they had underestimated the human capacity for care and persistence. The creature, meanwhile, remained beside the medic. It didn't return to its previous owners. It had made a choice, just as much as the medic had made his. It had chosen trust, loyalty, and safety over fear, abandonment, or obligation. The bond they had formed was stronger than anything else. The authorities eventually granted the medic permission to continue caring for the creature. Officially, he became its guardian. The creature, now healthy and strong, responded with quiet gestures, leaning against him, following him wherever he went, and showing affection in subtle ways. It was a connection that couldn't be broken by rules or regulations. Over the following days, the medic and the creature began exploring the outpost together. The creature learned to navigate its surroundings, testing its strength and agility. Workers who had been cautious at first now admired the trust and bond between human and creature. Some even began helping with minor tasks, inspired by the dedication they witnessed. The story of the medic and the abandoned creature spread quickly. Other humans and aliens began to hear about it, and it became a symbol of compassion across the outpost and surrounding regions. It reminded everyone that care, patience, and empathy could overcome fear, neglect, and indifference. One person's commitment had saved a life and inspired others to reconsider how they treated those weaker or abandoned. The medic reflected on everything that had happened. The creature had not only survived, it had regained its strength, spirit, and confidence. And he had learned something too about patience, dedication, and the power of simply refusing to give up. Sometimes survival wasn't just about medicine or skill. It was about presence, consistency, and genuine care. As days turned into weeks, the creature became more than just a patient. It became a partner, a companion, and a friend. It followed the medic on missions to assist other neglected beings. Together, they helped smaller creatures, rescued abandoned pets, and offered hope to anyone who needed it. Their bond grew stronger, and their work inspired a new culture of compassion throughout the outpost. At night, when the outpost was quiet, the medic often sat beside the creature, watching it rest. Sometimes it would nudge his hand as if saying thank you. Sometimes it would simply lay its head on his knee, content and at peace. And in those moments, The medic knew that their journey together wasn't just about saving a life. It was about trust, friendship, and the transformative power of care. The alien authorities never fully understood why he had been so dedicated. But they didn't need to. What mattered was that the creature was alive, healthy, and happy. What mattered was that one human had made a difference that no amount of rules, fear, or indifference could undo. The creature's eyes, once dull and tired, now shone with life. Its movements were confident, its instincts sharp, and its loyalty unwavering. It had survived against the odds, not because of its strength alone, but because someone believed in it when no one else did. The medic, looking at the creature beside him, realized that this story was far bigger than either of them. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the bond between beings from different worlds. It was proof that even when abandoned, even when the world turned away, life could still find a way if someone cared enough to stay. And as the sun set on the outpost, casting a warm glow over the ship and the valley beyond, the medic and the creature sat side by side. They had survived, grown stronger, and formed a bond that would last a lifetime. What had begun as an act of mercy had become a story of courage, trust, and tea.